for questions for Corey.
Hey, Corey, with the hours you guys get in the summer, give us an idea, what is a typical normal week as far as like what you get for hours with the team?
Will do. Appreciate that question. First and foremost, thankful to be here in front of you guys. I know I don't get to spend a ton of time with you all across the year, but in the time that I do, I'm grateful to be able to share a little bit about what we do. So in terms of a typical week, we get 8 hours in a week, right? And of those hours, 2 of those are devoted to football. So from an SEC standpoint, I get 6 hours with those guys. The week breakdown, we train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday is a recovery day, regen day. So that's what we'll be doing today. But of that, our training sessions, we go about 90 minutes. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do our OTAs. So that's, essentially a glorified indie period of football, working on some technical things with the guys. And throughout June, we'll do that. And then July, when the coaches leave out of here, the players will lead those things. So that's what the week looks like. We have optional hours for the guys as well. Like, it's nothing that is mandated to them, but if they want to come in and get some extra work, we'll open up the weight room on a weekend on Saturdays as well.
Hey, Corey, Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. What's the biggest difference you see in year 2 of working with the guys to when you first got here now? Maybe they have a better understanding of what you're asking of them.
Yep, appreciate that question, Brian. I think one of the major things is confidence. Right, year 1 was a lot of convincing them or getting them to believe in themselves that they were good enough to win. In year 2, I believe that they know they're good enough to go and win. Aside from that, where in year 1 it was a lot of building the culture, right? As coaches, showing them what we wanted. But now going into year 2, they have a very thorough understanding of that culture and what the standard is. And we look for it to now be more player-led, right? Pushing those seniors, those upperclassmen to be leaders, not only in their position groups, but across the team. And then really teaching those young guys what it means to be a Husker from a culture standpoint and understanding the standard of work, the quality of work that it's going to take for us to go out there and win in the fall. So that's a big difference in year 1 and year 2, just their confidence in themselves that they're good enough to go out there and win. And, winning in the fall, it begins now. It began in the winter with training. We put those guys through tough situations so that when they get in those tough situations in the games in the fall, that it won't be the first time that they've seen that.
Corey, this is Steve Sipple from HuskerOnline. Do you hear any kind of repeated things from the players about what they like about the new weight room? Do you hear themes from the guys about what they like?
Not necessarily themes. I think those guys are really grateful to be in that facility. For a lot of those guys, it's been in the works, now for some years. And to see that building be completed, to see that facility be completed, and them to finally have the ability to train in there, they're grateful for that opportunity. But with that, just the resources that they have at their disposal, right, in that new facility, it's great that now everything is in one place. It's a seamless flow when you think about training, when you think about nutrition, when you think about recovery, everything is right there. That they're not having to go this place to eat, but then this place to get in the cold tubs and the hot tubs, and then this place to go and train. From their locker room, everything is a few steps away. So I think that's a big thing with them is just the flow and ease of route that they take in terms of their preparation and their processes. Like everything is right there for them.
Could you call that an advantage? Is this weight room an advantage for Nebraska?
I'll say that, and really it's just your approach to training. Like I look at it as an advantage because of the tools that we now have at our disposal, right? In this weight room, being in the one previously, we kind of saw the holes, we saw the gaps, and things that we needed to equip our players with to be able to train them the way in which we wanted to, so that they can go be successful in the fall. I will say that's an advantage because I have a lot of tools that I didn't have in the other room, and the other room was great. Don't get me wrong, work is still work. You got to train hard wherever you're at, but us having access to different machines, us having the ability to train more guys, right? Our roster's getting bigger. We have 145 guys, and just the ability to have the space to train the athletes where they're not on top of each other. You know, they have adequate access to equipment where you know, we can get a large group in there, and we can train them as a large group, and then we can get a small group in there, and they have access to the space so that they can get the training that they, you know, so well deserve.
Hey, Corey, I'm Rick Ruggles with Huskers Illustrated. Can you get 145 guys in there at once?
Can I? Yes. Do I? No. You know, Fridays during the summer, we take a team approach to our training, and that's the only day we do it. I don't like groups that big because, you know, I'm very big on the details, right? And I want the guys to have eyes on them. I want them to be coached. I want them to be corrected. You know, so I don't love to have that big group in there. But at that same time, you know, we play football as a team. So on Fridays we'll bring the veteran players in as one group. The incoming freshmen, I don't bring them in at the same time in the weight room, but we meet and do whatever post-lift conditioning is that day. We'll meet as a group for that. For example, on Fridays, we run the stadium. We run Memorial, and we do that as a team, right? Because I want the seniors to see the freshmen. I want the freshmen to see the seniors. But in terms of getting them in the weight room, those incoming guys aren't as far along, right? You know, I'm still doing a lot of teaching with them, a lot of rudimentary things, so that again they understand what the standard is, they understand what that quality of work is. So, although we may be able to have 145 guys in that weight room at one time, I don't do it. You know, we got to get to a place where everybody is able to get the quality of work that they need to go out there and help this team win football games in the fall. So I don't do that a ton.
Hey, Corey, the same thing from the Omaha World Herald. Obviously, everybody in your field is knowledgeable and has a skill set, and yet I'm sure over a period of time you've been able to kind of see what separates a good strength coach from a great one. As you kind of continue to develop yourself, what's the separator in, you know, an average strength coach at this level and the very, very best? Humility,
you know, right? Understanding that you don't know it all, right? And always seeking to gain knowledge from other people, right? And I can say that one thing about me, right? Like I don't have an ego. I know that I don't know everything. I do, you know, I was blessed to have really good mentors coming up in the field and really good mentors still now within the field. You know, I can pick up the phone and call a number of coaches if I ever have a question about anything that I'm unsure. And I also have a staff around me, you know, that I believe is a lot smarter than me as well. You know, you hire people that are great at the things that you're not. You know, I don't need everybody in the weight room to be just like me, you know, where, I mean, everybody is very strict on the details and strict on the discipline things, right? You guys will talk to a couple of other people today just in the health and wellness department, right? Like Mitch is the best guy at sports science, right? Like I'm not that. So what do? I bring Mitch in here so he can run that department. Kristen, she's the best at nutrition, right? Is that me? No, I know enough about it to be able to communicate an effective message to my athletes, but I resort to Kristen on those things. So I think, you know, when you're looking at from good to great from a strength coach standpoint, it's not only continuing to seek knowledge, but understand what you're not good at, and then going out and getting people that are the best at that and making them a part of your program.
Is there a lift or a set of lifts that you consider to be core and sort of defining in developing your athletes?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you guys may have seen, like we follow closely the hierarchy of athletic development, right? Where it's work capacity at its base, strength, explosive strength, reactive strength, and speed, right? So when we look at those qualities, how we develop those is a little bit different, right? I mean, I look at for our strength-based movements, right? That's our squats, our presses, our deadlifts, posterior chain movements. When I look at our power or explosive strength movements, you know, that's our Olympic lifts. You know, we clean, we snatch, we jerk. We also throw different implements such as med balls, things of that nature. From reactive strength, you know, you're looking at your different plyometric variations. You're looking at, you know, your different jumps. And then from a speed standpoint, like we're getting out there and we're running fast. So, you know, every quality of athleticism, it does require a different mode of training or a different exercise. So all of those are staples within our program. And when you're looking into our program, right, the volume at which we perform, you know, given things depends on where those guys are at within our program.
Hey, Corey, this is
You know, this game of football, especially the style in which we play, it starts in the trenches, right? Like those guys have to be strong, they have to be stout, and they have to be well conditioned. So my ultimate responsibility, right, is to, not only ensure that these guys are healthy, but to give the coaches what they need on that field to play. So myself, Coach Rule, we sit down, like Coach Donnie and Coach Coolin, they're in the weight room every single day, like they're watching those linemen train. And, I'm in constant communication with him, like, hey, Coach, what do you see? What do they need to improve at? The good thing about my staff is each assistant is kind of responsible for a position group, right? And within that, they go and they meet with those coaches at the position groups and they ask the questions, right? What do you see your group not being as effective at? And then we bring all of that information back to the table and we figure out, hey, how can we attack that from an S&C standpoint so that we're giving the coaches what they need, we're training the players up how they need to be trained. And with that group in particular, right, like I said, got to be strong, got to be well conditioned, got to be able to move, got to be able to bend, right? So our program signifies that. Always going to train in a full range of motion, right? Be strong there because on a field of play, you're going to find yourself in some awkward positions. But you also got to be able to move those guys out of the way up front, right? So, as you look at the game of football, anything that we can do in the weight room to train the qualities that are going to allow them to be effective at their job on the field, we're going to do that.
What's the level of effort that you put in coordinating with Mitch and Kristen and recovery and medicine so that you guys are on the same page? How much time do you spend with that, and what's the process? What does that process look like?
Right. That's a lot of my time, really the majority of it. When I look at our health and wellness staff, I think about it like an F1 team. Right, like that's a high performance vehicle, and you have different constituents who are responsible for a different part of that vehicle, right? And that's their sole responsibility for that aspect of that vehicle to perform at a high level. And if one part isn't, then that car isn't going to have the ability to win that race. That's how I kind of look at us, right? Each department is responsible for a specific aspect of these guys' health and wellness. And if one of us aren't, performing at a high level, then that athlete can't perform at the highest level. So, our collaboration is ultimately, the thing that we have to be on point with. Mitch's office is in the weight room right next to mine. Kristen's office is just around the corner from mine. Chris and Drew, their offices, a few steps down the hallway. So when you look at not only S&C, but sports science, nutrition, athletic medicine, rehab, right? Like we have to be on the same page. We communicate daily. Every week we meet and we go through every single athlete, right? Where are they at in terms of progression and body composition, in terms of strength? Where are they at with respect to, maybe some lingering injuries, things of that nature? And then we all develop a plan to stay on top of that so that issues that may pop up, especially now during summer training, right? Like we don't want those to be issues during fall camp. We don't want those to be issues during season. So that collaboration between myself and those directors of all those other departments, right? It has to be of the utmost importance because if not, like we're not going to be able to put the best product out there on that field, and our kids deserve that. I'm a disservice to them. We're all disservices to them if that isn't our ultimate priority because they work their tails off for me, and regardless if I got to get up at 3:30 in the morning, I ain't getting home till 9:30 at night, right? Like I'm all for them, and they're going to get everything that I have of myself to ensure that, when they're here at Nebraska, they're going to be trained well, they're going to be taken care of, and, we're going to put them in the best position to be successful on the field.
How closely connected is Coach Rule with those conversations?
A ton, right? Like, that's the leader. And I'm, as the leader in my department, right, from an S&C standpoint, I'm very big on communication. Like, you always get back to the leader. So Coach Rule, he's heavily involved. When we sit and have those meetings, Mitch, he does a ton with respect to making sure those notes are taken very precisely, and then all of that information is communicated to Coach because he needs to know everything that's going on with these players. not only from the standpoint of him being a head coach, but also it's like, hey, we need to know if there are any adjustments that need to be made, especially as we go throughout the summer, going into fall camp, going into the season when we're looking at practices. Like, if Coach Rue doesn't know that information and he doesn't understand, how, he may need to adapt things, or if he needs to contact a parent, and get on the phone with them, so he is very much an intricate part to that communication, and we make sure that anything that's discussed on this ground floor makes it all the way up top to him.
Hey Corey, Luke Mullen from the Lincoln Journal-Star. Can you kind of detail how the players' training workload might change from now to fall camp versus during the season as well?
Right. So when you look at summer training, it's kind of broken up into two phases, right? We have this phase in June, and then we get a little bit of a blow. They get a little bit of a blow around 4th of July, and then we come back and we have that period right before camp. So the period in June, the weight room volume is a little bit higher, right? We're more focused on max strength at that point and making sure that these guys are very well conditioned. When you get into July, right, the weight room volume comes down a little bit as the volume on the field goes up, right? Because at that point, we got to make sure that they're ready and able to sustain what we're going to ask of them in fall camp. So our sprinting volume goes up, our running volume goes up, out there on the field. Weight room volume comes down just a little bit because as we transition into fall camp, right, like they got to be ready to go and attack day one. In July, that's when we do a lot of our testing, from a weight room standpoint, from a conditioning test standpoint. So June is a grind, July is as well, but we back off on the weight room a little bit from a volume standpoint, and we up it on the field a little bit more from a running volume standpoint going into July. And then when we get to fall camp, right, football is the main thing. We still train. I don't believe in the word maintain, right? You either getting better or you getting worse. So we're still going to train, but the volume at which we do some things takes a little bit of a regression as we add more volume to the athlete from a football standpoint.
Hey, Corey. Giovanni Parnazzo, Unlimited Sports. How do you go about developing a level of trust with new players that come into the program when there's just so many guys that you're communicating with every day?
Right. I think authenticity, like they can see that. They can see when you genuinely care about them. I don't go on the road recruiting, but I'm heavily involved in that process when they're here on campus. They not only meet with me and Mitch and our staffs with respect to a presentation standpoint, but I'm at the dinners, I'm at the lunches, I'm around them all the time, I'm around their families, and ultimately, right, like. When I get them in, like I sit them down, I meet with them one-on-one. I get to learn more about them and who they are as people. Because if they don't trust you, then they're not going to work as hard as they can for you. So that is very important to me that they understand. Coach Campbell is going to push us hard, but he's pushing us hard because he cares about us, right? He has our best interests in mind. So I think trust is. That comes before anything, because it's hard for me to tell a kid what to do if they don't understand that, he's telling me what to do because it's going to mean more for me later on down the road. I might not see that now, but Coach Campbell sees it. So trust, without trust, you don't really have anything. So I have to build that relationship and solidify that relationship on the front end. And I think if you ask any athlete in that building, they'd say, Coach Campbell, trust us, we trust him, and they know that I care about him. And because they know that I care about him, those kids, they work their tails off for me.
How does the amount of in-depth research and analysis that you guys have now help you maintain that level of trust with those athletes? Because you can show them the data and the statistics and kind of why you're doing the things that you're doing.
Right. Like when these kids, sign their NLIs to come and play football here, they're not coming here to be power lifters. They're not coming here to be weightlifters. They're coming here to be elite football players. And that's an approach that we take to our training, right? Like we assess the kids a ton. Why? Because it helps me make sure that I'm aiming at the right target. Mitch does a great job with respect to keeping me checked and balanced to make sure that I am giving them what they need, more specifically and individually as an athlete, to help maximize their abilities on that field. So, from those assessments, we can see, hey, are you as strong as you need to be? Are you as powerful as you need to be? Are you as reactive as you need to be based on the position that you play? And if you're not, well, then I have to go back into my programming and look at making adjustments so that we make sure we're on the right track. And because of that, like, we sit down and we talk to our athletes. Like, we don't test, we don't train, we don't do anything unless we communicate the whys. And, I think they respect that a ton because, I'm not just asking you to put, 75, 80% of your max on your back and tell you to squat at 8 sets of 5, right, if it doesn't have a meaning behind it and it's not going to make me a better football player, right? So we educate our guys on why we do what we do. They know going into the session why we're doing what we're doing, and as a result, we get more intent out of their training because they know it's going to benefit them.
Do you get a general sense about where this team is at physically in comparison to where you were at a year ago at this time?
Yeah, all encompassing, right? We're bigger, we're stronger, we're faster, we're more lean. Again, right, we assess the guys a ton. And kind of looking back at where we were going into the summer last year, a question was asked earlier about like staple movements in our program, right? From our bench, our squat, our clean standpoint, like we've added, about close to 8,000 pounds across those lifts across this team, right? And that doesn't include those newcomers. That doesn't include those new freshmen. That includes, the guys that we had here last year. So I think that speaks volume for the guys, not only them working hard, but also them buying into our programs. Like, when we look at our body composition reports from Kristen, when she does their DEXAs, like guys across the board, their lean muscle mass has increased, their fat mass has decreased. Even when you eyeball the guys, right? Like we don't have sloppy body types, right? Like our big guys, they're not fat. Those guys are lean. Our skill guys, right? They're filling out the t-shirts, right? They're starting to look like Big Ten football players. We get young guys that come in and, in a blink of an eye, they put on 15, 20 pounds. And sometimes it's hard for me to see, but when the coaches leave and then they come back and the feedback that they give, just kind of seeing the athletes from where they were when, they left out and then, where they are when they come back, it just speaks volumes to the work that those guys put in. So, I'd say from this point last year, very much a testament to those guys and their hard work. They came back in a better place. And because of that, we look to and aspire to, be in a better place by the time we get to fall camp.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Corey will kind of be, as we go through the weight room, just